like me, if you're a mom, if you ever had a baby in your stomach, or even for people who have had a lot of weight in their stomach for a prolonged period of time, it really makes a difference what kind of exercises you do if you're trying to tighten a loose, weak mommy tummy. It's very different. And that's why I share the exercises that I do on my TikTok because it's very different than just sit ups. I'm a mom of 4 kids. And after my second kid, I was trying really hard to get my core back strong because I had severe back problems and people asking me if I was pregnant. But aside from that, I had really bad back problems because of how loose it was around my core. Anyway, the sit-ups weren't helping. The traditional ab exercises weren't helping. And I used to run a gym. I used to teach exercise classes. I used to teach core classes. And I didn't understand what were the right exercises. And when I found out and when I got the certifications I needed to really kind of dig deeper for myself, I had to share it because I couldn't find this information when I was on YouTube searching desperately for the information. So that's why I come out here and I share this information so that you can understand because I was at such a loss after I had my kids, especially after my second one. I didn't know what to do. But anyway, this is why the traditional ab exercises are not super helpful for us. And then when we go into why the exercises, the deep core exercises work better. Okay, so with our stomachs, before we have a baby, we have our muscles are intact. Whether they're strong or not, they're still in its kind of more original form, um, meaning that they're not stretched out. After we have a baby, all of this gets quite stretched out. Not just the muscles themselves, but the connective tissue that wraps the muscles of our core, of our entire core. So you have your rectus abdominis, your six pack muscles. You have your obliques, your external and your internal obliques. And then under that, you have your transverse abdominis. Those muscles are all wrapped in connective tissue that connects everything. You see how these muscles aren't like literally connected to each other. Um, they are they are connected by the connective tissue. So that's how everything in your body is really connected. You know, there's connective tissue wrapping a lot of stuff. Fascia is one of those buzzwords. It's a connective tissue. So one of the things that happens so that your baby can have room in there is that the connective tissue that meets in the middle, that joins your abs together in the middle, actually stretch out. So you see how slim this line is, where that connective tissue is just a little slim line. After it gets stretched out from the baby, like all this gets stretched, that connective tissue at the midline can look something wider like this. Okay, so that thin line can go like this. And remember, you have connective tissue wrapping all of the muscles. So not only is this midline tissue stretched, but also the tissue that's wrapping your muscles, that the connective tissue is also stretched. Okay, that's why, like, remember before we had babies, we would get bloated, and yeah, we look bloated. Like when you see these girls on TikTok who are like young, pre-baby, and they get bloated, it's like, yeah, I can see you're bloated. But like for us, when we get bloated, we look like, boop, 6 months pops out and we look pregnant, right? That's because the container of our core itself has stretched out. And it's stretched out like in the shape of how we were when we were pregnant. So if you had babies that sat low, then you have that kind of stretched, lower. That's what I have. My tissue, like this stretching midline, is more stretched down low for me. Like when I measure myself, it's more stretched down low. And some I have people that I work with that theirs is more stretched up top. Some is just a general stretching from the top to the bottom. Some can be just really stretched at the midline. So stretching occurs differently. You know how like people would say, if you're carrying high, it's a girl. If you're carrying low, it's a boy. Like there's like no science behind that. It just depends on how your connective tissue is stretched. For me, and for a lot of us, it stretches a lot down low. The gravity has it down, the baby down here, and everything down low just really stretches out. But everyone is different, and so that's what is happening. All that connective tissue, the muscles, all of that is just kind of stretched out after baby. And once we have the baby, then those tissues can often not totally tighten up on its own. So the condition where you have a stretching of the midline connective tissue, like how I showed you here, if it is wider than like 2 fingers, that's considered diastasis recti. Diastasis is it means separate or separation. And then recti refers to the rectus abdominis or your six pack muscles. So diastasis recti is the separation of those muscles and the tissue, the connective tissue that connects them together at the midline is stretched. Okay? So, how do you know if you have something like that? Or how do you know if your deep core really needs some strengthening and maybe the sit ups and traditional ab exercises aren't the thing that's going to really work for you? Which is what I found out for me. It didn't work for me. Okay, so we're going to do a quick test. I have a more in depth test on my in the links in my bio. I have 3 exercises and I have tests there too, and a bunch of other stuff. So check it out if you're interested in that. But here's a quick test that we can do together right now. Wherever you are, you could be standing, you could be sitting. I want you to lean back, okay? Lean back with me and look down. Do you see bulging or coning coming up through your midline? So you're going to lean back, don't actually touch anything. If you're standing, you can do the standing or sitting. This is actually how a lot of moms come to me and say, I had this like bulging, like an alien coming out through my midline, or you know, a lot of moms will find out that they have it when they notice like they're doing some activity, maybe playing with their kids, and they lean back and they look down and they see a bulging or doming coming up through the midline. Okay, do you see that? If you see like it kind of might look like this. You see how that's bulging or doming coming up through? If you see that, I want you to put me in the comments. If you ask any questions, sometimes I'm not paying attention to it, but after I'm done kind of giving the initial background, because a lot of times people are coming on new and they don't know what deep core weakness is or diastasis recti. So I like to kind of go through some preliminary stuff that I go through almost every single time I come on here, just to give you a good foundation for understanding what the real problem is with our mommy tummy so that we can make sure we're addressing it properly, okay? Um, so, okay, I see me in the comments. Melanie of Grand, I see user 553869021 saying me. I see definitely me. Okay, well, if you're obese, how would you know? So, if you have extra love around the middle, I have a more in-depth test. Well, all of us should take the more in-depth test so that we can kind of measure how wide it is. So when you lean back and you look down, so you want to lean back as far as you can until you see something happening. Another thing that would be an indication that your deep core, when I say deep core, I'm talking about the deeper muscles of the core as opposed to the more superficial muscles. So you have your more external muscle of the abs or your rectus abdominis, your six pack muscles. That's what most people focus on. Because we get that ab line look and the external obliques. You also have your internal obliques and you have your transverse abdominis. The transverse abdominis wraps around your waist, it cinches your waistline in, and that's often quite stretched out. All the muscles are often quite stretched out. They're all important when it comes to rehabbing our core, but the deeper core muscles are often the ones neglected in traditional ab exercise programs, and that's why I'm addressing those there. So when I say knowing if your deep core is stretched out, I'm not so much talking about the outer muscles like your six pack or your external obliques. I'm talking more about the transverse abdominis or something. So here's another thing I want you to look for. Do a sit up. Like right now, if you can get down on the floor and do a sit up. Can you do a sit up and keep your abs flat? Okay. So no matter how much weight you have, you'll be able to tell the difference. Like if you can do a sit up and use your muscles to keep your abs in flat, then your deeper core is pretty strong. Now, let's say you do a sit up, but you see bulging, like not just the midline, but the rectus abdominis as a whole, the six pack, kind of bulges forward. So if you're in a space where you can do that, try that right now. Do a sit up and see if you can keep your abs flat while you do that sit up. Or do you see general bulging of the abs as you come up? Okay? If you do, then I think for me that argues whether or not you are ready to do a sit-up. Sit-ups are wonderful because it's great to make sure we're strong enough to be able to sit up in general. It's just if you are just focusing on the flexion muscle of the abs, you're not necessarily getting all of the ones that you need. So, like for instance, you have a transverse abdominis muscle. That's your deepest core muscle. That muscle literally wraps around your waistline, cinches you in like this. That's what it does. It supports your abs in the front. It supports your back in the back. With it and its accompanying connective tissues, because the transverse is all the muscles of your abs are connected to connective tissue. So that transverse abdominis, that deep core muscle with the connective tissue, it wraps around and it cinches you in. Okay, and doing a sit up doesn't necessarily help to shrink and like really tighten that muscle. And so that's why it's important that we are understanding the function of the core muscles and how to train them so that you can really get that tightness that you need, not just for the look. I was meeting with somebody earlier today. She wanted to kind of have a meeting to understand more about what we do, Mommy Mango, and helping ladies. And I was saying, she was saying, oh, is it just for women who just want to, look better? I'm like, well, that's not really the thing. I mean, yes, it's nice to have a tight core, but what we're not realizing is it's a very functional issue. So let me just demonstrate this really quickly. I have to go actually soon because my kids are eating it. My husband and I'm supposed to be there. I'm gonna go. But this is like the quiet time because they have food in their mouth. I have 4 kids, by the way, for those who didn't hear that in the beginning. Anyway, so your transverse abdominis kind of wraps around you like this. Okay, it's underneath all these other muscles, but it wraps around you like this, all right? And what it does is it helps to support you. So it supports your tummy this way and holding it up and in, okay? But it also supports your back. So like for me, my struggle after having my kids, well, after having my second kid, after my third and fourth, it wasn't so much because I kind of knew what to do. But after my second child, I had a pinched nerve. I was like literally crawling on my hands and knees because I couldn't stand upright. You know why? Because if you don't address the loose, weak of this muscle, your deep core muscle that holds you in, holds your stomach in nice and tight, you're also losing the support in your back because you see how that wraps around and supports my back. Okay, so if you don't have that support, then it's like walking around without your natural support system. So it's not just an aesthetic thing, it really is a very functional issue. And next week, I'll be back on around the same time and I can talk about how that's connected to the pelvic floor. So if you have leaking issues, um, any kind of leaking that's coming from the pelvic floor, that can also be tied to looseness and weakness of the core. So it's a very functional issue, not just aesthetic. Okay, so like I was saying, what was it? How did I get there? Yeah. So it's the reason why the exercises that I put on my TikTok are the way that they are is because they really try to integrate the deep core muscle that cinches your waistline in because that's what is our natural support system for our waistline to help keep everything nice and tight because that muscle is actually a stability muscle. It keeps us upright. It helps us to be stable while we walk and everything. So when that muscle is weak, other muscles have to chip in and take up for it. So that can lead to back pain because we might have tight hip flexors because the secondary, not secondary, but another stability, another thing that helps us stay stable are our hip flexors. And so if your deep core, your transverse is wrapping around, that's supposed to be wrapping around supporting you is very weak and loose, then your hip flexors have to work harder and they kind of tighten down and you get these like hip problems, back problems. And so that's why it's super important. That's why I believe it's super important to really tighten that support system. I mean, a great side effect is that it tightens the tummy too, but it's really great for function. Okay. So, that is just a background overview of why my exercises on my TikTok are different and why you don't see me like advocating hardcore like sit-ups and stuff like that. Like it's fine. It's fine to do sit-ups as long as when you do sit-ups, you can hold your core in and keep your stomach flat when you do them. If you can't control that and you feel like bulging or pressure coming down into your pelvic floor, like you feel a lot of pressure pushing down on your pelvic floor, those are signs that you aren't ready for that exercise. Okay, so here's a tip I want you to take away. Whatever exercise you think is great for your body, especially for your core, if you are feeling pressure coming down into your pelvic floor, like you can't control it, but it's pushing down. You feel parts pushing down, or you're getting excessive doming coming up through the midline and you can't control it and flatten it back out. Those are signs that you aren't controlling pressure properly. Okay, and you can make matters worse. So I just want you to take that tip away. If you're doing any kind of exercise program, a core program, and you feel excessive pressure coming down or excessive pressure coming through your midline, it just means you aren't ready for that yet. You can get there. Like, don't feel like, okay, this is a limitation, I can never do it. But you're going to have to start working on proper pressure management, and you also want to start working on strengthening those muscles properly so that you can handle those exercises. And part of that will be strengthening those deeper core muscles, whether it's your pelvic floor muscles or your deep core, like the transverse abdominis, those types of muscles, strengthening them first so that you can get to the place where you can handle those things. Okay? All right. So hopefully that makes sense. I know that's a lot. Like, I have a YouTube channel. I have, if you go to the link in my bio, click on my free exercises. I have full length free exercises that you can get started with today. It's like 28 full length exercises that I did when I was almost like in between not pregnant and pregnant with like my fourth child, I think. And so some of them I'm pregnant, some of them I'm not, but it's a whole month's worth of full length exercises. You can check those out. They're in the link in my bio. And I have a bunch of information where I'm discussing these types of things and going into a lot of detail. So if you missed anything in this chat, feel free to go and check it out because I post a lot of that stuff there so that you can always get that information. Okay, I'm going to take just a quick second to go through the questions really quickly, but if I missed your question, feel free to message me on my Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever. I'm probably most responsive in like Instagram and Facebook. Look for Mommy Mango and you'll find me. Um, Okay, Sarah, I see you said I have all the issues, bad back, tilted pelvis, diastasis recti. Yes, so all those things can be worked on. We just want to make sure we do it properly and we're not just pushing through doing random core exercises that aren't for healing those deeper issues, okay? So thank you so much for sharing. I need that. Where can I get one? Sarah, Lisa, 83. I'm not sure what that was. Oh, maybe it's this. Okay, so this was just like a back support thing that my mom had. And I asked her for it so I could use it for demonstrations. I'm not a big fan of waist trainers, and we can talk about that another time. But this is for, I would say, if you need it short term or if you're pregnant or something like that, it could be very helpful. But long term use of any type of thing that's super restricting around the waistline, I'm not like a super huge fan of. So definitely we can talk about that next week. That's a good topic. Next week on Friday, we can talk about waist training and training your natural waist trainer. Okay, I love talking about that. Let me see. Okay, I don't think I see. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. What if I have loose skin? That's bugs. What if I have loose skin? What if I have loose skin? I have loose skin. Like, loose skin is one of those things that is so normal, so common. It gets better as we age, really. The texture and tightness of the skin does get better. But one thing I will say is I have ladies who send me pictures and say, hey, I have loose skin, what can I do? And when they send me the picture, it's not just loose skin, usually. Like, I have loose skin. Okay, you can see my stomach. I've had a lot of progress over the years. Let me fully relax. Okay, you can see it. I had, like I said, I had more stretching here. I was a bad ab gripper, upper ab gripper, so you can see I have a little bit of like tightness here and looseness here, because that's how I stretch with my four babies. But as much progress that I've had, I still have loose skin. It's just like part of my life. It's normal, and so I love to just normalize loose skin. I just tuck it in my clothes, and it is what it is. It's this part of being a mom, you know. But if it's something that really bothers you, there's only can get it removed cosmetically. But like I said, I have lots of moms that have come to me and they'll send me pictures and say, "What about my loose skin?" And I look at the pictures and I'm like, that's not just loose skin. Like, you have loose core and it's looking loose. So sometimes what people think is loose skin is really a loose core, and as they tighten it, the appearance can be so much tighter after they strengthen those muscles. So I would wonder like what the loose skin looks like, because I have loose skin, but I don't have the overhang that I used to. And I have before and after pictures. If you look at I have a program, 8-week core challenge. I don't know if it's in the link in the bio, but either way, if you look through all my stuff, you'll see pictures at some point of testimonials. And one of them, she was like, I have loose skin, and I looked at it, and I was like, okay, no, that's muscle looseness. We need to tighten that up. And then we did do some nutrition modification because I have a whole like weight loss workbook that's included with our 8-week core challenge. And she just did one thing. Like I'm a fan of just adding on, not taking away stuff, but adding on. But I said, if there's one thing to take away, it would be excessive sugar. I think she cut out like sugar for the 8 weeks or something like that, or just desserts. I don't know if she cut out all sugar. That tummy was like just literally, you have to see the pictures. And she may still have a little loose skin like how I have, but what she thought was loose skin was hanging muscles, like loose muscles and connective tissue with weight inside of there. So after she tightened up, it made a huge improvement. And after she lost the weight, even more improvement. It like went from literally what she called loose skin to literally a flat stomach. And you have to see those pictures. She did it in 8 weeks. I was just so amazed. My progress wasn't that quick, but hers was amazing. So I'd have to like, you just want to make sure it is loose skin you're talking about and not like loose connective tissue and muscle and weight inside of that, weight compounding with that, okay? Because it might be that, and as you work on tightening, you're gonna see a lot of results, okay? Let me see anything more. I've been in the gym for 11 months and I can't fix the diastasis the top of my stomach has. The top of my stomach has flattened and the bottom is just still there. Okay, yeah, I'd have to obviously, it would be nice to look and see exactly what's going on. So you just want to make sure you're doing the right exercises. Um, lower, when we're talking about lower, if you have more stretching at the bottom, you want to make sure that you are integrating deep core work with like your legs. So that often helps you target that lower part. Like in my programs, I integrate more legs with lower body, lower tummy stretching, and more arms with upper body stretching, and making sure we're checking for rib flare and things like that. So I try to make sure we get the entire core. But if you have lower, it's hard to really just kind of tell you exactly what to do without seeing you and assessing and all of that. But I would say just make sure that whatever kind of deep core work you're doing, you're really integrating your legs and the lower part of your body, not just kind of isolating the core and just kind of just doing core work without integrating the legs. Because when you integrate the lower body, it's going to make that lower part work a bit more. Okay, so just from the top of my head, that's something that I would say. Okay, let me see. If I missed your questions, please message me. Okay, I'll get back to you eventually. Hopefully. Okay, I'm a mom of 4 kids. Okay, so just know we'll get there. Hey, I like the purple hearts. Oh, I love all your videos and you're like, oh, I appreciate that so much. Thanks for all the hearts too. Is it hard to get tummy tight after umbilical hernia repair? That's a great question. I love that. I wouldn't say so. Lots of ladies who come through my program have a hernia. So just for understanding, for those watching, uh, a hernia is a hole in the connective tissue here. Whereas with diastasis recti, it's just not just a, but it's a stretching of the connective tissue. So it's kind of like related to the similar problem. So you can have stretching or you can actually just get a hole in there. And so as you work on the muscles, the deep core muscles that are connected to this midline tissue, it helps to strengthen the connective tissue itself. So like when you engage your deep core that wraps around your waist and tightens you up, it pulls on that connective tissue in a good way because it tells that connective tissue like, hey, she's working. Let me get stronger and tighter so I can help her, with that force that's happening at the midline. What that does for the hernia is it helps to make that tissue around the hernia very strong and can prevent future hernias. So let's say you had a hernia repair. Well, if you have a hernia repair, you might have a little scar tissue. One thing I have for my ladies, if they've had any kind of abdominal surgeries, even pelvic floor surgeries, because I had that and I struggle with that myself. But any kind of scar tissue and any of the muscles that you're trying to work needs to be worked. It needs to be massaged. It needs to be kind of like deep tissue. So I would suggest, and I have my ladies in my programs, do deep tissue massage on the scar so that we can keep getting feeling and we can keep that nerve, the innervation that happens there, circulation, all of that. We just want to make sure that we're keeping that scar nice and loose and able to be worked with. So that would be like my one tip for somebody with hernia is make sure you're massaging that. And you're doing that deep core exercise and also pressure management. You don't want to do anything that's causing bulging in that midline. That's going to be like no, 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 because you don't want to cause that bulging is pressure coming out, and that can force this tissue to stretch more or have a hole. It's not super easy to do, so don't feel afraid. But if you already had a hernia, you want to make sure you're managing pressure properly, and that when you're doing exercises, you're not seeing excessive pressure coming through that space where you had the hernia. Okay, so that would be like my little 2 cents. Um, all right. Okay, so this will be my last question. I'll have time to answer because I really have to go. But a beautiful mess. I love that name. It says, "What is considered a heel diastasis recti so I can change my workouts, or is it better to always?" Okay, so the goal is to get as much function as you desire. If you want to be a rock climber, if you want to be whatever sports enthusiast, if you just want to be able to do yoga, whatever it is, your goal would be to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do with exercise, and you can get there more or less. So with you, you're saying, when can I change my workout? So with diastasis recti, what's considered normal is if this gap here is 2 fingers or less, and the depth when you, and if you don't know what the depth is, go to the link in my bio, do the actual like test that test for width and depth, and then you'll know what I'm talking about. But if the width is less than 2 fingers, that's considered normal. When you stick your finger down in there when you're doing a sit up, just a little crunch of a sit up, it should be like no depth, little to no depth. That means that this tissue is nice and tight. If this tissue is loose, you're gonna put your finger down in there, and there's gonna be depth there. But if it's tight, it's gonna just bounce like a trampoline when you put your finger in there. Okay, so little to no depth when you push down, and less than 2 fingers width. It's considered a heel diastasis recti. I use that loosely. Okay, so you can do whatever you want, really, when it comes to exercises. You could, like right now, you could go to an exercise class when they're doing whatever workouts. You can do it all with them. You just want to pay attention to your body. So the important thing, I think, is more understanding your body and how it's responding to whatever workout you're doing. So, and that's why in the link in my bio, I have one like little mini video in there that describes how to know when an exercise isn't right for you. Because if you find yourself in a situation, you're doing an exercise, let's say you're doing a sit-up. I said sit-ups are no-no. Well, sit-ups aren't a no-no. It's just if you can handle it or not. So let's say you're doing a sit-up, but you're in a class, you do a sit-up, you go to do a sit-up and you see excessive doming. If you're seeing excessive doming and you can't control that, you just want to back off a little bit. So while everyone else is doing sit-ups, you just do a little, head raise or something, or, lift your knees up or do something different. Substitute one of the exercises I have on my TikTok for that. You just would modify. So if I were you, I would definitely, anybody who's watching, check out the link in my bio. Check out the one little video once you get the free exercises. In that playlist, I have some educational videos that are like 15 minutes or less. And one of them says how to know if an exercise is right for you. And it really is case by case basis. So when you say go into regular workouts, you can always go into regular workouts. But if you find when you're doing a particular move in that regular workout that you're feeling pressure coming down into your vaginal or rectal area and it's excessive and you can't control it, if you find doming coming up through your midline and you can't control it and flatten it back out, if you're having pain or anything, there's some signs that I give you so that you can know, like, okay, this move I need to modify, and maybe need to strengthen a bit more before I do it. So that's more of the situation, is just kind of like knowing your body more. And that's why I have the courses that I do, so that I can teach you how to like manage, your pressure, know your body, so you can know what's working for you and what's not. And then once you see that you hit like you're doing a sit up and you really want to, your goal is to be able to do sit ups, and you're like, still I'm not being able to do the sit up. I get up halfway and I get doming. I feel pressure. So what you do is you can just go as far as you're able, hold it there, and go back down. Over time, as you're practicing holding in your tummy, engaging your tummy properly, engaging your pelvic floor properly, it'll get stronger and you'll be able to come up farther and farther and farther. So the main takeaway is listen to your body, modify when you need to, and then keep working on strengthening those things and work your way up to it. Okay, so this is just not a blanket answer for that. I feel like from here on out, after listening to me, I'd love for you just to always pay attention to your body and know what's working for you or not. Because it's just they're not blanket answers. All right, thank you so much for joining me. I plan to be on every Friday early afternoon, so we can have these little chats. My videos, they're very haphazardly thrown up on my YouTube channel, so if you've missed anything, know that this will be posted sometime in the next week on my YouTube channel so that you can catch everything that we talked about and all my previous lives that I've been doing. I'm going to just keep posting them on YouTube so that you can always get the information. All right. Don't forget, I have the free exercises and the link in my bio. See you next time.